Hi, I'm Erin Helgeson Torres, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this concert on the second Sunday series presented by Highlands Presbyterian Church. I'm going to take you on a journey today of some French and Cuban masterworks for solo flute, and I'm going to flex my academic chops a little bit and bring you on low-key guided listening of these pieces. Many thanks first to Ohio Northern University for providing a safe venue space for me to record this concert in. Also to my husband, Michael Torres, for providing tech support and running all of this recording. And you, the audience. It is awesome to get to make music for somebody, even though it's in this strange, through a screen experience. If you feel so inclined, please consider a donation to my Venmo at Erin-Torres-14 or my Apple Pay. I'm going to be splitting those donations with Friends of the Homeless, which is a Columbus-based transitional home and shelter that I really, really believe in. So I hope you'll consider that donation. Get comfortable, enjoy. I really hope that you enjoy today's concert. So the first piece on today's concert is Eugène Bozza's Image for solo flute, which means image. Interesting thing about Bozza is he was actually born to a French mother and an Italian musician father. So he spent most of his formative years actually in Italy studying music. And then he came back to Paris to study at the Conservatoire. And he actually studied 3 different degrees over time, which I think is really, really interesting. You're going to hear all those elements actually in this piece. He started with performance. He was a really exceptional violin player. He completed that pre. Then he came back for conducting. And at this time, his wife writes that she was worried that he had a bit of haunting stage fright. So he decided, hey, I'm going to explore something else. And he went into composition. I think all of those elements, performance, conducting in terms of meter, and also obviously composition, factor into this piece, which is really neat. Another thing that's really interesting about this time is he wrote this in between World War I and World War II, when French composers were sort of going through a bit of a change. They were moving away from the romantic and impressionistic styles of writing and into more eclecticism and wittiness, and that's very present in this work for sure. He accomplishes that in a bunch of different ways, but I'm going to share 3 of them for you to listen to as you listen to this piece. One of them, I think, is his registral writing. He writes all over the range of the flute, which is really, really, really neat. You'll hear me in the very tippy top of the register and the very, very, very bottom basement. And he does this with ease, just sits all over the instrument. Let me give you an example of this. So the piece is split up into 3 sections, and this is a loose description. He starts with an intro and then follows up with this very athletic, sort of dance-like structure. And then there's a middle lyrical section, and then the end comes back to this athletic playing. And each one of those sections is actually sort of punctuated by a really interesting cadenza-like part, which is interesting because, of course, it's for solo flute, but that really allows the flutist to be really improvisatory. And so in terms of register, he's able to explore that the most in these cadenza-like sections. You'll definitely hear where they come in. But this is actually the end of his first cadenza after the athletic section. And of course, that is all over the place. You know, it starts on this really, really high A7 for those of you keeping track, and then gets you all the way into the very lowest bit of the flute. So really, really interesting to play that. Another way he gets to explore wittiness and eclecticism is actually in his timbral changes. These are more implied, but he's got these just amazing places and chances for us to really change our colors. So here's a really interesting section. This is actually in the lyrical section, which shows this. I'm going to go from a very red, sort of brassy, in-your-face color. And this, of course, is a French delineation for those flutists out there. We'll start in that red color, and then I'm going to totally open it up and try and get into this really, really murky yellow color that kind of fades away from sound. write a little bit more of that because it actually went from red into this yellow section, and then I try to get to this really pure blue section when it has the recap of the lyrical section. So that's really, really neat. Finally, he uses a lot of really new contemporary techniques in this piece, especially for when this piece was written. One of them is flutter tongue, which is a really neat technique. We use it all the time now, and he was one of the first to use it in a piece. So this is in the end of the second cadenza, so that you can listen for this when you get there. It's a really, really neat way to sort of say, we're really excited, we're enjoying where this piece is going, and it's almost in your face by this point. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this. Bozza's Image for solo flute. So next up is a piece that's totally new to me. It's Leo Brouwer's Sonata for Solo Flute. This is a really, really interesting piece. I have loved getting to learn it. Brouwer is a living composer of Cuban descent. He studied in the States at Hart Conservatory and then later at Juilliard. The interesting thing is when he studied at Juilliard, he studied with Vincent Persichetti, and you can really, really hear his influence, especially in the first movement of this piece. Another thing that's cool is that his first works, his early works, which were written in the 60s and the 70s, of which this piece is included, are not just inspired by Cuban rhythm, but they're also inspired by his love at the time of aleatoric music, which means chants music. He was especially into Xenakis. And I think that you can hear that influence for sure, as well as his Cuban dance rhythm. For one thing, we're going to hear a lot of dance rhythm in this, and I'm going to show you some of it later. But the first movement especially gets to explore that almost pointillistic writing. It's really, really neat. So the first movement I'm going to play two movements from this piece. The first movement is Preludio, which is a 2-theme prelude. It's got a slow section and a fast section that's very, very rhythmic. And I think the rhythmic section really does sort of elicit those ideas of Persichetti. In fact, I really do almost feel like I'm learning one of the movements from the flute and harp piece, which is really, really neat. Just really, really kind of neat, exploratory music that still is very rhythmic. Now the second movement is called Tonata, which simply means tone, but it's not a simple translation at all because it's talking about not just hearing a tone, but singing a tone, feeling a tone, playing a tone, and dancing a tone. I think that's really important because this feels like a very danceable piece, and of course I move all over the place, so I have a great time dancing. I'm sure you'll pick up on that. There's two main themes of dance that we hear in here. The first is very reminiscent of a Cuban danzón, which is really supposed to be played on this sort of sultry, slow-moving, danceable rhythm. So here's the beginning of that tonata. And that theme just comes back over and over again in different reiterations. So you'll hear that all over the place. There's another one which has a little bit more motion, a little bit more direction in it, and this one also has some real interesting syncopations and another dance rhythm to listen for. And that you'll hear as well in a lot of different places. It gets kind of explored and developed as the piece goes on. So, two movements of Leo Brouwer's Sonata for Solo Flute. The third and final piece on today's concert is Pierre-Octave Ferroud's Trois Pièces, 3 pieces dedicated to different people. Given my love of contemporary music, Pierre-Octave Ferroud is of special interest. He's a French composer. He wrote this piece actually in 1921, so it gives you an idea. This is the oldest of the pieces that I'm playing today. And he founded a group called Triton, which is a contemporary music society, one of the early contemporary music societies, so really, really interesting. He also studied with Florent Schmitt, which many of my saxophone friends will find interesting. And you can definitely hear the narrative that he spins, that influence that he gets from Schmitt, for sure, in these 3 different pieces. So each movement demonstrates significant East Asian influence, which was a common trend of much of 20th century French music. The first movement is called Bergère captive, which means captive shepherd or captivated shepherd. It's pastoral, it's plaintive, and one of the things he does really well is explores rubato. So I'm going to give you an example of that, and rubato just means tempo fluctuations. It makes it really, really fun to play, and it also means that you never play it the same way twice. So I'll give you an example of the very beginning melody. If I play this perfectly in tempo at 8th note equals 152, it sounds like this. Which is lovely and lilting and fun, but let me put some tempo fluctuation in that and have a good time with it, and you'll hear what I get to explore through this piece. So as you can see, it ends up being really, really, really fun to play. The second piece is called Jade, which is very athletic and dance-like. And it also is made up of pentatonic melodies all over the place. It has some really interesting new contemporary techniques in it, including pitch bends. And this is supposed to be reminiscent of an Asian flute. So the end really gets to explore color, very, very reedy, almost wood-like color, and then this really interesting sounding pitch bend. So you can listen for those in the second movement. Now the third movement is called Tonyan, which is written for a Chinese festival called Double 5, which means it happens on the 5th day of the 5th month. And if you're doing the math there, that's Cinco de Mayo, kind of interesting. But this festival is all about playfulness and all about having a great time, and I think this movement really, really shows that. Tons of different themes, super improvisatory, kind of sounds almost like I'm making stuff up at times, which is really fun. Also full of virtuoso melodies and a very slow theme that almost imitates a Chinese flute. I'll play a little bit of it for you so you can hear when it comes, because it's really, really neat. It's made up of all these irregular rhythms, so I get to have some fun with it. It also has some direct tempo changes in it, which almost makes it sound like I am making it up on the spot. So I hope you can listen for that, because that gives me a lot to play around with as a flute player. So I hope you enjoy this. Trois Pièces by Pierre-Octave Ferroud. so much for watching. I really, really hope you enjoyed this music. I enjoyed getting to play it for you. I want to go ahead and thank Highlands Presbyterian Church one more time for having me on this concert series, and for you for getting a chance to sign in and listen to it. I really hope you learned something, and I hope you had a good time doing it. Have an awesome rest of your day. If you feel inclined to make a donation, that would be awesome. I'm going to split those donations with Friends of the Homeless here in Columbus. And I hope you have a really great rest of your week.